All right. There will be bourbon. The virtual bar is stocked. The guest is here. It is Mr. Alan Morte of Three Ventures. How are you, brother?
I'm doing good. And you
All
look
right.
great, by the way. Last time I
Yeah,
saw you,
it's been a minute.
you weren't hitting it as hard as you've been hitting it. I
No,
mean, maybe you were drinking a little bit more, like you're in
no.
that poster in the
That's
background, but
none of
you look
that. None of
good.
that. None of that. Really, the only difference is that um, I probably walk 6 or 7 miles every day, in addition to what I do workout wise.
Really?
Yeah. So I mean, I fairly pretty much eat the same. I clearly drink the same, if not just as, if not more.
If not more.
I mean, I do a little bit more from a workout perspective because I just have more equipment to use where I'm at. But I mean, I'm honestly not doing anything significantly different other than I think, when you walk 6, 7 miles a day, that's a big deal over a course of a week. It just starts
Oh
coming
yeah,
out.
spikes your metabolic activity for sure,
Yeah.
especially if you do it in the morning.
Yeah. So yeah, I think like I said, I was telling you guys. So the other thing, Alan is a 5-time world championship member of the Plastic CrossFit softball team. Congratulations on your latest victory.
Yeah, thank you. You were there in spirit.
I got
We
four.
missed
I
you.
don't got five.
Yeah. I mean, whew, one hand's getting a little weighed
I
down,
know you
working
guys.
on that other one.
Yeah, you guys are gonna run out of wall space for all the team photos as well. So
Yeah. I got one of you right over here to my left.
I
You
was
just
wondering.
can't
I
see.
see something in the bag. I was wondering if those are one of the photos.
Yeah, I got a bunch of racing photos
That's true.
over here
That's
from a
another
lot
thing
of
I
the
need to put
races.
in there. Yeah, I got to get. Let me make a quick note of that before the bourbon kicks in. Racing. Yeah. So before we do get into a little bit more discussion, as always, this is fueled by America's native spirit, which is bourbon. And tonight we're going with a little Knob Creek 18-year, fairly recent release from Jim Beam and their Knob Creek distillery, small craft or small batch line. Hard to find at a normal price. The state of Virginia, where I'm currently at, was not what provided this to me. It just happened to be randomly when I was driving up to New York, where I went to college back in April. Well, the first college I went to where I played baseball. And as I go through every state, if I see a liquor store, I stop. And this was the one next to campus, and I was like, well, I got to go in here. The last time I was here was 20 years ago, underage. And what do you know? They had it just sitting there at retail because what college kid in Oswego, New York, is going to be able to afford the markup that a lot of these places will stack onto this. So I picked that up, got it, and now we're going to bust it out here on the show. And yeah, like I said, 18-year, all the Knob Creek line is pretty damn good. You can find it readily available. Most of the 9-year and the 12 years gotten pretty popular as well. 15 still kind of hard to find. And the 18, like I said, if you can get it, grab it. But as always, I
We
always
have
tell
it in our
people,
bar at the office.
do
It's
you?
good
Well,
stuff.
yeah, but just don't overpay for this stuff is my thing, as much as you can. California's way I would say easier to make relationships because it is just a regular type of state in terms of the liquor problem, if you call it a problem. But Virginia, it's state ran. So everything, the good side of that is that, you're not going to get it for much over retail, but it's just hard to find stuff, right? Because it's allocated.
Wait,
And they put
did
limits
you
on
just say government and good in the same sentence?
There's a good
I'm not much of a huge drinker, but I will say, the stuff that we do drink is in the bar. And one of the guys in our office, his name is Dragos. He runs the Bourbon Club.
Yeah, I remember this was before the shutdown. I used to do little meetings with him in Roseville.
Yeah.
He was part of the Bourbon Club. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, he stocks our bar quite nicely. And
He does.
when we were first doing our podcast, the WAC Attack podcast, I used to have a drink or two, and when we'd have like a 2 or 2.5 hour podcast, it would be, kind of interesting because my words would start to sound like this at the end.
It takes some practice, and I've got 3 years of this, so I feel like I'm getting better. The good thing is you never really hear it, right? So I don't go back and listen to anything largely, so I don't know, but I do feel when it's time for me to turn this. It's like, all right, let's wrap this up. Because
Wait, you don't go back and listen to the episodes?
not really. I used to, like, the first year, maybe I'd go back, but I'm not really. Like, I remember them. I don't really go back and listen to stuff. There is times when I'm going to upload and I'm trying to come up with a summary and I'm like, oh, I really don't remember because I probably was having a little too much. So I'll go back and speed through it just to kind of pick up on some key things for a summary. But I definitely don't go back and listen.
Yeah, I go back.
Most of these are like 2-3 hours, man. I don't really listen unless I'm driving, and I don't want to listen to myself.
That's true. I can see that. I listen ours on usually like 2 or 3x speed. And the main
How
thing
do you
is
do that? I can't do that.
I can process things very quickly. It's also
Doesn't it
probably
sound
why
weird?
no, it doesn't sound weird to me. I mean, I think maybe it's because I've become accustomed to it, right? And so, I've just always listened to podcasts that fast. My wife can't stand it.
Yeah.
But like, a really long Rogan episode, that's how I listen to a really long Rogan episode. And I usually don't listen to something that I'm not interested in. That's the kicker. So if it's something I'm interested in, that it helps to, pay attention to the topic when everybody sounds like a squirrel. But um, for our episodes, I think we're always just hypercritical. I would say we're as close to a perfectionist as you can be without being toxic. Um, and always am looking to make sure that I understand maybe how to, ask a good question and then shut the fuck up and not ramble on, or, um, you know, be actively listening when we have a guest on, and making sure that I'm asking questions to keep an interesting conversation going, or when I'm talking about a topic or a subject that I'm very knowledgeable with, that I have a lot of experience with, not forgetting, key, simple, sort of explanations of details that if I was talking to a peer, we would normally skip right over. But if it was, somebody listening to us for the first time, like some of the guys on the podcast or on the softball team, that they at least have a basic understanding of what it is that we're talking about. So for me, it's been really good because it's like an avenue to improve my communication. And so I've really enjoyed at least listening to myself and listening to the people on and figuring out how we can improve and do better. Because I'd like to turn it into a full-time thing, not a hobby. I'd like, we just picked up our first sponsor of the podcast with Spotify.
That's good.
So I guess we were like one of their breakout podcasts using their platform. And they came to us and offered an advertising spot, basically publishing the podcast platform that we distribute on. So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome, man. And so since you did bring it up, what is the podcast? Where can they find it? What is it about?
Yeah, WAC Tech Podcast. It's about technology.
Attack.
WAC Attack Podcast.
Okay.
It's about technology, entrepreneurship, finance, health, and fitness. Basically the things that myself and the other two founders of Three Ventures, the company that I'm the president of, that we all have a lot of interest and experience in. So obviously you heard and listened to the AI episode that we had. Curtis, my twin brother, does a lot of the health and fitness. My other business partner, Wally, handles a lot of the technology side of things. And then I'll play the utility player when needed, when we talk about racing or other items, or
every team needs its utility man.
The entrepreneurship side
right here. This is my utility player. You should guys with me. Yeah.
He, she.
That's a he. This is Frank.
Yeah. Well,
Francois. He's originally from France. And we've changed his name to Frank because he's American now and he's disowned that lesser country where he hails from. So yeah, he's a good cat. No, this is great. I'm glad you brought that up because there's a lot of ways to take this. And as I said to you, like, look, I don't script it. I get some key ideas and then I just sit like we're at a bar talking, and you mentioned AI. So I want you to explain this, not like you're talking to me. I want you to explain it like you're talking to a room full of fifth graders and tell me, what is AI and machine learning? What is it?
AI and machine learning is a computer that has collected all of the knowledge and thoughts of everybody in the world and is able to provide you with answers to the questions that you have for it. However, just like people, it can tell you a truth or it can tell you not a truth, right? And so while it is like anybody else, you have to know what is good and what is bad. That is what AI and machine learning is for a fifth grader.
Okay, now why has it gotten the attention of so many prominent figures like Elon Musk and a lot of other, heads of that side of the world to basically come out and say, hey, we need to stop this, or we need to really put a stamp on this in terms of we need to regulate it some way. And then to take it after that, how do we know the people that are going to do the regulation are going to be any better than if we just let it run wild? Because then again, you bring in the human element, right? So what's the big thing that people need to know with this stuff? Because this, most people just, they're concerned with their own lives and they don't really take into account a lot of the stuff that you and I are going to talk about tonight.
Well, what I heard you say was 3 questions. The first one
Probably.
is probably actually the first one was, what is the deal with AI and why is it suddenly a big topic? Okay.
Yeah.
The second one was, why do prominent figures still worried about it? And then the third one was, how do you get general people to think about this or to consider it when they're worried about, living paycheck to paycheck or other items?
Right.
So the first question is, why is this different? Well, back when OpenAI came out and they had their GPT models, Curtis and Wally and I had beta access to it. And I mean, it was crude. And it wasn't all that great. It was cool in concept. It was like a bunch of tech guys geeking out and doing that. And so it was fun. But when the second model came out, it was a little bit better. We're like, okay, this is cool. They didn't really have an easy way to use it. And then when GPT-3 came out, it was an exponential growth in terms of the level of intellect that the large language model had, or LLM. And they had a very intuitive user interface in the form of like a chat, right? So think like for your boomers out there, for your millennials, AOL, right? Yeah. Or for, Gen Z and everybody else, Facebook Messenger, right? Mm-hmm. And you can go in and you can ask a question like magic. It just gave you a response. Well, this was largely the first time that the computational power of computers had aligned with an aggregated amount of data on the internet and had aligned with a very nice interface for you to interact with very high process computing power and a very large set of data with rules and regulation, think training of a model, that gave it some parameters to follow sort of societal norms in humanity. So it was this perfect alignment of those 4 dimensions. And so it looked like magic. And it still looks like magic to most people, but really what it is the probability of one word being next to another word. And so when
you're typing and you get that auto thing, right? Like an autofill, which I hate.
Yes and no. Let's say there are, what's something you're interested in?
Let's go CrossFit.
Okay. Let's say there's 1 million articles out on the internet about CrossFit, and 10,000 of them are about the Fran workout. Well, you go to Chat GPT and you're going to ask it, well, what is Fran and CrossFit? Well, now it's got 10,000 articles that it's been trained on, and they're all going to say a different variation of what is Fran. So it's going to give you a different variation of what is Fran based off of the words used in all 10,000 of those models and in relation to the question that you ask. Right. So if your question is different, like what is Fran, or how to do Fran, or why is Fran a staple workout in CrossFit, it's going to use bits and pieces and combinations of those, and it's going to aggregate them all together, and then it's going to give you the best probability of words being next to each other, depending upon how you ask it. If you just ask it, what is Fran, it's going to give you a very cut and dry answer.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
But if you said, pretend you're a marketer and tell me why the workout Fran is so sexy, right? It's going to, add in some flair into it. And it's all based off of the probability of words being next to other words, right? And so this is the first time that those 4 dimensions that I had talked about earlier had really aligned in a way where it looked like magic. I mean, magic is nothing more than illusion.
Right. Right. Yeah.
This is nothing more than illusion. It's the first time we've had alignment, all this technology and everything else. So now to the second question, which is, why are prominent figures like Elon Musk really worried about this? Well, there's two parts. Okay. One, if our federal government could pull their head out of their fucking ass, they would realize that they should have immediately went to OpenAI and said, you cannot make this available anywhere else but the United States. And matter of fact, we'll pay you to do so. Because first and foremost, it's a technological masterpiece. It is literally a paradigm shift. It is like the start. It is like the start of the internet.
Yeah.
I mean, this is how big of a deal we're talking. So then you think about it like, okay, why is Elon worried? It's not just for national defense, which, by the way, this would be like one of the few things in my lifetime that I think would be a legitimate use of national security, right? And I put it up in air quotes, and you're laughing because you
No.
understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And when you consider, okay, the exponential growth that this had from 2 to 3 years ago when I was working on the beta, largely that exponential growth is because people were using it. They were saying, this is a good response, this is a bad response. And now it has guardrails when it looks at the probability of words being next to each other.
Yeah.
So now not only does it have all that data that is trained on the internet, but now it has feedback from users. So when OpenAI released this to the public and they said, everybody use it for free, what they did is they built significantly better guardrails and scaffolding to keep its responses in line with cultural norms or societal norms, or whether you agree with ideologies on the left or the right. You know, trust me, there's tons of biases baked into this platform. Whether they're conscious or not is an entirely different debate. So not the platform being conscious, but the people consciously implementing bias into the scaffolding.
Right.
So the growth has skyrocketed exponentially. So now the responses that you're able to get they are approaching a level of intellect that would, I would say, probably rival the average IQ of the human being. It's not necessarily like at the bleeding edge of cognitive capabilities as a human, where I am able to process thousands of things and, you know, interpret strategy and evolve as something happens. It's not there, but the thought process is very quickly going to get there. And then when it gets there, it is going to exponentially grow beyond it. So the logical argument is, once it grows beyond that, how do you stop it? Because literally, I mean, humans have to eat, sleep, work out, and then deal with aging. We simply cannot have the same amount of output as a machine can have.
Right.
And a machine can run all day, all night, as long as it's got electricity and there's nothing wrong with the computer components. So the thought process here is, this is a very, very dangerous method of operating, because what happens when it gets to what they call artificial general intelligence, or AGI, where the level of intellect is indistinguishable from a human being.
Right.
So that's what they're concerned, and that's what they're worried about, is runaway AI, and specifically AGI, because Chat GPT is, they're saying is AI. I mean, it's a subset of AI with a large language model and a GPT. Why am I? What do I not know what GPT stands for off the top of my head? Anyway, I'm spacing on it.
No worries. They can Google it.
Yeah, they can Google it. I should Google it. Processing text. Anyway, so that is where the thought process is at. And so it basically, from my opinion and from the opinions of these leaders that you were referencing earlier, The irony is it's going to put white collar people out of jobs.
Yeah.
Blue collar folks, I mean, if you're not in like an assembly plant or manufacturing or something where robotics can easily take over your job, it's coming for you last. Because, and here's the beautiful irony of the entire thing, right? All of the smart people documented how to do everything with their jobs online. And now all of that information was used to train these models. And now guess what these models can do? They can do all of these white collar jobs. So in the future, I actually think, software architects or software developers are going to be like, you know, not really that sought after of a job, because somebody like myself or Curtis, my twin brother, who's a computer scientist, software architect, somebody who's more senior, has experience, we're going to be able to use these tools to write the same amount of code that it used to take us in a month to do. In a solid 8 to 10 hour of work without interruption, we could probably do that in a single day. Because we would know the questions to ask it. We would tell it exactly what to do. We would let it know what libraries what development methodologies you need, like don't repeat yourself or dry principles. We would be able to have it manage its own integrations, and we'd be able to have it write its code to check its code when you publish it. That's known as like continuous integration and continuous deployment. So it pretty much allows you to become a 10xer, which is sort of the term. And a 10xer is like if you are somebody who knows the interworkings of software development or these analytics platforms or these technical tools that you use, and these AI tools are integrated with it, you should, in theory, be able to know exactly the questions to ask it to get it to do all the work for you. And I'll give you a prime example. I was working on something that I had been wanting to do for a long time for our company internally. And one of the challenges of running a business and having 20 employees is you never have enough time to work on running and growing the business. And so I wanted to do this financial reporting for us using a data visualization platform that we use. And I had always known how I would do it. I just knew it was going to take me a significant amount of time to write all of the these queries that interacted with each other, that got us this really important piece of financial information we needed, which was like, who are our best customers? Where did they first come from? How have they grown with us over time? How many lines of business have they worked with us with? And what is the original person in line of business that gets credit for bringing that company to us? And a bunch of different delineations of questions are related to that. And with ChatGPT, I was able to do something that would usually have taken me about 10 to 12 hours to write. I think I did it in about 35 minutes.
Shit.
It was wild.
That's amazing.
So when you get to the question of why is somebody like Elon Musk worried? Well, because it's going to displace a lot of people. It's going to displace a lot of jobs. It's going to make
no more learn the code. Like no more of that. No more learn the code when you're out of a job. Your job is like, remember that one?
Yeah, I remember that one.
We'll get there.
It's really tough because the most important skill, ironically, to have is critical thinking and problem solving. And now armed with this tool, being a jack of all trades and a master of none is now arguably the best thing that you could possibly have and be.
CrossFit for work. That's funny.
So the rise of the, less than 10 person billion-dollar companies, they're coming. That's so what, we're going to have multi-billion-dollar companies with less than, 20 employees. Right. I think back in the day, I don't quote me on this, but I think it was like sometime in the middle 1900s, to be a billion-dollar company, you had to have over 1,000 employees. Now we're talking maybe 10 or less. So when you
Well, I
talk
mean, I
about
guess you
job,
still would. Okay, go ahead, and then 'cause I got a few follow-ups after you get done because I know you got one more part of this question, like why
yeah,
people should.
the job displacement,
Yeah.
is that's I think what Elon is worried about most. And people need a sense of purpose, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll see health issues and suicide and other things become a pandemic, making COVID look like
Yeah. So I
um,
saw that with that.
look like nothing.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what he's really worried about. And the government can't get ahead of this. And if they were able to get ahead of this, they would have PhDs and computer scientists and entrepreneurs and economists. They would have them all working together, people who are very technical in nature, understanding the implications of this, because the jobs that AI is likely to produce are going to be low paying service jobs. They're going to be, jobs of convenience, I believe. Uh, and so, that's just something to consider. And it's going to displace jobs before it creates jobs, because the market will be so new and it will be underdeveloped.
Okay. Um, a couple of things to get back on. You mentioned before that our government should have made sure that this stayed only in the US. Is that even something that could have been possible, or how would they have even done that? Because isn't all this
Well,
open source? Isn't that the definition of it, right? Is that anybody can access it?
well, that's the discussion and that's the debate right now. Is some internal memos from Google have been leaked, and they basically said we're getting crushed, and OpenAI is going to get crushed too. Facebook released its model. I forget the name of it off the top of my head. I think it was Lambda or LLMD. Anyway, I don't know, but it either got leaked or it got released in an open source fashion. And within a week, the amount of progress that model had for fine tuning it for very specific purposes, because teams of 2 and 3 people knew how to get really quality data and feed it through the model and then train the model and tell it what was wrong. And then teams of 2 or 3 people were basically multiplied by the population of the internet. And the growth of that model in a week had surpassed, I think, anything they had done in the last couple of years. And so Google had basically came out and said, our strategy, our methodology is a losing methodology, and we're not losing to OpenAI, and we won't lose to Microsoft. We will literally lose to the open public internet. And that open source is the only way to go in the future. And I think that that's right. I think that the only way to have a healthy AI future is going to be in large decentralized cells, where should we have a rampant runaway AGI or artificial general intelligence, that there will be other AGIs that haven't gotten off the rocker or off the leash, that will be able to go and fight against it at an equal level of playing field, because a human trying to fight an AGI is a losing battle.
There's no off switch.
There's no off switch.
Yeah.
So uh, there's strength in numbers.
I know, but that's because going back, you also said, we should have all this collective, PhDs, et cetera, all this stuff working on this stuff. That is going on, not to talk about all the stuff that, we spoke about before, but that is going on. It's a very big problem. And a lot of the problem comes down to what's always the problem in government and getting people there? How do you pay them? How much do you pay them? No, it's upskilling, right? You can't afford them, because why would I go work for the government for, 150,000 if some random company out in Silicon Valley is going to give me 600 to do the same thing? I mean, you come down to dollars and cents at this point, right? And it's hard to tie a lot of those people who are coming in with that technological skill, that ability to do it. Let's be honest, a lot of them, they're not U.S. citizens. They don't have a loyalty to this government. They don't have a loyalty to this country. They come here because they have the ability and the freedom to work, but it's hard for them to pronounce some sort of loyalty to something that they don't, that's a total foreign concept to them still.
Yeah, and I think what the other thing too that the US government doesn't realize is the nonsense that has been pushed over the last 5 to 6 years, specifically around disregarding science and facts and things that have been generally accepted principles over the last hundreds or thousands of years. That's a huge turnoff to immigrants, especially immigrants that are of a more hardworking traditional culture.
Yeah.
And the culture here in the United States is it's could be described as disincentivizing at best for those types of skilled labor.
Yeah.
The other thing too is, we um I think as a country, the debt is a large problem, and the corruption, greed, and money laundering through the oh God, what was the term for
Ukraine?
no, not Ukraine. It's the
You said money
industrial
laundering.
military
I was just,
complex.
oh, okay. Well, you said money laundering, so I just
Yeah.
think that
Well,
popped.
that's where I was going with the money laundering, and the industrial military complex in Ukraine is a synonym. But the thought process there is, we had to be in a place where we were being responsible, and we've been largely irresponsible, from the federal government's perspective. And now I think this is going to seriously come back and bite them in the ass, because they had a golden opportunity to be a leader here. And the only path and the only solution forward is a decentralized governance. And
Yeah.
what that will largely lead people to understand is they don't need the federal government, and they don't need government at all to help do these things for them. And they'll realize they'll need to be autonomous in their strength and numbers and small cells and teams on the internet. And I think that will paint the larger model and the larger picture for, hands off, because of everything that you had just mentioned, which is, what is it saying? Like A's and B's go work for private companies, and C's go work for the government, and dropouts are the ones who hire the A's and B's.
The more you repeat it, the more it comes back to being it's what's old is new again, right? Because that's true. I mean, that's that I've heard that growing up. You've heard it. You're younger than me. Like, so that's reality, right? Like, look at all these guys that we've learned over the years who were just dropouts, or they weren't good students or whatever. You don't need to be some great student to do what you do. You started a business, right? Most people aren't modeled that way. Let's just be honest. Most people are not modeled to start a business. And that's not to discount how smart or whatever you and your brother are, but most people just want to go. I would say most people in the United States, they want security, and they want to just go find a job, something they can go right out and do for the next 30 years, retire, and that's it. And then there's others with the entrepreneurial spirit, which is kind of built into the American fabric as well. It's just not as populated, right? You got 340 million people in this country. How many of them do you really think are the entrepreneurs? They're the entrepreneurs.
Not many.
Yeah. I would argue probably less than 5% of that number, right? That would probably go and start companies and willing to do that risk and failure. And there's not a lot of people that are there. Most people are risk averse, I would say. At least when it comes to employment, there's a lot of things that people take risk with. But
yeah, I would agree with that. The thing that we were taught as kids was to go to college and follow the A to G program, and do as you're told. And my dad, he was always one to take risks, and I fundamentally believed that the riskiest thing you could do was to play it safe, because to play it safe was to basically put your well-being in somebody else's hands. And ignorance is bliss, because if you were to just follow the rules and do as you're told and go get a job, the irony is the person making rules can do something that's detrimental to your well-being, or the person who hires you for the job can do something that's detrimental to your well-being. And so at least in my mind, playing it safe was the riskiest thing you could do.
Yeah, and I would argue that clearly comes from your father, but most people don't have that experience or that mentality to draw on, I would say. Because what you're describing to me sounds a lot like my best friend. All right. So my best friend I grew up with, he's still in Florida, commercial real estate, does very, very well for himself. Right. And by all accounts, like his father was, kind of pushed that sort of mentality, I would say, that mindset. He wasn't what James ultimately went on to do, but he always kind of had his side business. He had his professional career, but I felt like he, based off of his grandfather as well, kind of pushed James to develop that mindset that you just described. And James was going one of two ways, right? He may not like me telling this story, but I'll tell the condensed version of it. So James used to get into a lot of trouble, especially in high school. And James is still to this day the smartest person I know. Gifted, program, all that stuff. Whatever metrics you could use for intelligence, James is off the fucking charts, right? Also a great athlete. Sports kind of kept him online for a while, but then he got away from that and he hung out with a really bad crowd. And when he went to college initially, he was using his entrepreneurial spirit for the wrong things. And, his dad found out. Well, what he found out was that he literally had a business plan, like a whole detailed business plan about how he was going to be able to pull off all of these things that I'm not going to get into detail on. Right. And then he found the army. He went to Italy for 3 years and he got his life straightened out. And now he came back and used that entrepreneurial spirit for good. And now, like I said, does very, very well for himself in the commercial real estate world. But yeah, I mean, that's the example of what I know, but I wasn't like that. Like my parents are, retired nurse, retired corrections officer, right? Like they work their ass off. They're smart people in their own world, but they were never of the, hey, let's go start a business. Let's go take these risks and all that. Cause they weren't risk seeking people. They were seeking security for my brother and I, right? Which that's what I argue is most of this country.
I would argue the same thing too. The traditional American dream, which I think was largely maintainable and
they've done it.
attainable.
It's not attainable for us now at this point without doing more of what you're saying, I would say.
Yeah, you definitely have to take risk.
Yeah.
And I think fortune does favor the bold, but the thought that this comes from my father is definitely the truth. I don't think there's anything far from that. And I was very fortunate to have a mentor. His name was Cliff Stanwyck. He was a luxury real estate agent here where we grew up in Northern California.
Gig.
And he found us through my business partner at the time was working for this media company. And the CEO of that media company, he was the one that sold him the real estate. And he had some ideas in real estate that he wanted to do. And so the guy who was Cliff's client introduced him to Wally, who introduced him to us. And he sort of mentored us for the first 3 to 4 years starting our business. And
awesome.
That was really how we got our start, was selling our services to his really rich clients. Right. And that's just the truth.
That's not bad.
We worked hard and we made it, and we figured out how to, generate our own clients. But the reality was we had a mentor. And I think that, outside of just having a solid role figure, like a father to take risks, young men need mentors just as, young women do too as well.
Absolutely.
And so that I would say that is paramount in being able to take risks, because assessing risk is just important as taking it.
Oh yeah. 100%. 100%. So there's one thing I had one last follow-up on what we were talking with, and I don't know how related this is. I know it's just something I've heard up recently that is another huge concern, and maybe more about, well, I know you know more about this than me, but if you don't, be like, I've never heard of that. But if you do, could you expound on what exactly is quantum computing and why is that something our government is so scared of at this point? Because they are.
Well, you work at the Pentagon, right? So you might know. Yeah. Well, do you? I don't freaking know.
Yeah.
You do something. You live in Washington, D.C. Oh, shit.
No, I don't. I live in Arlington, Virginia, right there.
Oh,
Yeah. I'm on the free side of the river for now.
Oh, sorry, man. I just had a cramp.
Did you get a cramp?
I
Like,
did.
see what happens? You mentioned the Pentagon, and all of a sudden they use that direct energy thing you were asking about right on you.
It's a direct energy weapon on my hamstring.
See, this is why you got to drink bourbon, friends. You're always hydrated because it's made with water. And Alan's over there. He's too busy getting shredded for racing season.
Yeah, unfortunately, the
every pound counts in that car, right, man?
yeah, every pound does, because I'm 6'2", I'm a meathead.
Yeah, you're a big boy. You're not a small guy, that's for sure.
So yeah, you can probably see some more of the pictures now, and I got my helmets over on the side, and I'm going to stand up that way. My hamstring.
That's the first cramp in like 90 episodes ever. So congratulations on that.
And it was a good one. I mean, I was like ready to get on the ground, and say, hold on, we got to just tap this on pause. So you were asking about quantum computing before.
I was.
Pentagon smited me with their infinite DARPA skills and abilities. Quantum computing is really a paradigm shift, like ChatGPT is a paradigm shift in the world of or in the perception of the world's view of AI. Quantum computing effectively makes our current security for computers null and void. And that is why it is such a big deal. So quantum computing means that, in theory, okay, and there's going to be plenty of kooks out there if they watch your There Will Be Bourbon podcast. They're going to call me out on this because it's scientifically wrong. But explaining it to layman's people, this is the easiest way to explain it, okay? So quantum computing basically makes the computing abilities of a computer near infinite. Okay. And right now, we're on let's just say we're on some really good computers, right? It is hundreds of times better, if not more. So in theory, right now, it would take a computer about 30 years to crack the encryption of AES 256-bit encryption. Okay. And that is generally what we use in the world. And that is a generally accepted standard of security for encryption. Basically, that's why they say, hey, is your computer encrypted? Is your iPhone encrypted? Right. What that means is all the data on it is encrypted with an algorithm, right? And it's a mathematical equation that our computers, in their computing power, it would take them 30 years to complete that mathematical equation. So think of them as a large calculator.
Yeah.
So quantum computing could basically solve that mathematical equation at a near snap of a finger. So quantum computing is a large threat because if the military or federal governments or financial institutions or banking systems are using AES 256-bit encryption, and their networks are publicly accessible via the internet, which some of them are air-gapped, meaning they don't have any access to the internet, and you have to physically plug into it to get onto that network. That is why quantum computing is such a threat. And so it would basically make all of the world's information accessible and near real time to anyone who gets it first. And that also means that those computers could, in theory, be able to brute force or overwhelm systems to get into them if they didn't have sophisticated risk and threat detection and threat management systems in place. Because you got to think about it like this. You got a lot of military guys, I think, that would watch this. And the missile defense system that we have, that Israel uses and everything else.
Yeah, the Iron Dome.
The Iron Dome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Imagine sending so many missiles at the Iron Dome that it physically does not have the capability to shoot them all down. Some of them are going to get through. That's what quantum computing could do to security or threat mitigation techniques or risk mitigation strategies. It would essentially just overwhelm the system until it got in. And then it would also be able to decrypt everything. And near real time, basically meaning whoever gets it first could control the world.
But we're not putting quantum computing in charge of the defense of that as well. Like I know you mentioned this 256 encryption or whatever. That's like what we operate on. We haven't decided, hey, here's a counter to this super high tech, super fast ability to crack all that.
Well, the problem is you have to be able to encrypt and decrypt, right? So
Okay.
if I send you a message and it's an encrypted email, right, you have to have the key
Right.
to
Got it.
decrypt that, right? Yeah. And so you can't make these things ridiculously hard to decrypt even with a key because well, it would just be inefficient.
Yeah.
Right. For it to operate. So there's many use cases here, and I haven't followed it that much to know who's leading or what, but I would imagine, this is a DARPA project. I would imagine DARPA's involved with our technology companies. And to be totally honest, this is where, I think Elon was really going with the government needs to regulate AI is, NVIDIA makes most of its chips in Taiwan.
Yeah.
And NVIDIA is arguably the leader in chip manufacturing. And NVIDIA is at the point where they're actually using artificial intelligence to design their next chips. So they got them so optimized with human intelligence that then they started to train their AI models to build chips more efficiently and faster because they had variables that they wanted it to improve. And they said, here are all the things that you could do to improve those variables. And now NVIDIA has an AI that is building its own chips, or designing its own chips, I should say, largely autonomously of human intervention until it gets to the point where it thinks it has a legitimate product. And then I'm just speculating here, but then it would go through a human review.
Yeah.
Those chips are made in Taiwan. Well, what's
This is why
happening
we care about China, right?
Well, what's happening in Taiwan right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so if Taiwan has all of these factories and all of the machinery to make these types of chips, suddenly it's of interest for China. And it's really close to home. So nationalism, imperialism, whatever the fuck you want to call it, strategic advantage.
Yeah.
That's why we kept all of our military bases after World War II.
Yeah.
So why the US government hasn't been saying, NVIDIA, you got to bring all of this over to the States and we're going to subsidize it so it's not an impact to consumers and it's not an impact to your bottom line, it is beyond my total thought process. Like if I was the president of the United States, I would say, fuck your feelings on social issues and I'll put people in place to deal with that. I'm going to go focus on the things that matter, which is going to be technology independence, energy independence, and not getting
actual
us into
national
unnecessary
security
wars.
issues. Yeah, there you go.
Right.
Actual national security issues. I like that. You're too young still to run for president, but when you're ready, I think we're on to something.
You can make a donation at morty.win.
Yes. Yeah, morty.win. He's got his pack set up for the next 2032. He'll be ready to go.
Yeah, I think I'm going to start off with like city council.
Yeah,
so
start. I mean, like I said, small wins. You're in the right county you're in the wrong state, but you're in the right county. So,
that's true.
That easy win.
I can agree with that.
That's good.
And so those are the things that I think about. And then there's another piece in there that there's a company out of the Netherlands, and they're the ones that make the actual machines that make the chips. And that's why we're real hanky-panky with the Netherlands, and why, we're very much in each other's hip pockets, because that is the Netherlands' number one most important asset from a God, what is it? What is the word they always use? National security. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's their number one asset for national security. It's their number one leverage in bargaining. And so if you just look at that as Americans, I would be going, why the fuck do we allow those things to be made in the Netherlands? And why are we allowing the company that makes the most performant chips to do their manufacturing on those machines in a country that is arguably right next to the Chinese mainland.
So Netherlands went from making ships 400 years ago and being the best in the world at that. Now they're the best at chips,
Robotics to make
chips to
computer
ships.
chips.
Ships to chips.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Sounds like a good dinner.
It does. They got good food over there, I hear. I haven't been.
I mean, I've been there.
Have you?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's like the best food, but it is very tasty food. It's
That's a win.
it's a lot of it is fried, a lot of it's
Yeah,
meat and
that's
potatoes,
Europe.
right?
Well, a lot of that part of Europe. You gotta, yeah.
But it's
I
a good
understand.
type of sourcing of ingredients. You know, it's not a bunch of bullshit. Like bitter ballen is definitely very good.
Yeah.
That's like if macaroni and mashed potatoes had a baby and they fried it in a deep fryer.
Oh, yes.
It's really good.
Let's do that. I might do that this weekend. That's good. Yeah. And that is, you know, and I don't want to take this too far down the national security road, but man, I know this is some of the things that come up in our softball chat randomly, but man, you give us, not saying you, but I say most people give our government way too much credit. You know, that just don't assume that we have the best and the brightest on the working in our interest at the upper levels, because we just don't.
We have career politicians who have found
the people
out
who want to be there, and they've stayed there, and so they naturally at some point have to move on. I've done it. Do the line of secession for the president. Just do the next 15 people that are in the line of secession. Just tell me what you think of them when you're bored. Don't do it right now because we're talking. But yeah, when you're bored and you want to go down the rabbit hole before you fall asleep, just look at the next 14, 15 people that fall in that line of secession after Biden.
It's so infuriating. And the reason why it is so infuriating to me is because I fundamentally believe that most people are reasonable.
Absolutely.
And I would say that the political class, both parties,
yep,
they have found a way to turn being into government as a way to generate a large amount of financial wealth and be able to build an elite status. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I would largely say that it's a byproduct of building the best economy in the world and building arguably one of the best places to live, right?
And no term limits.
Yeah, all of that's a byproduct of
yep.
the two things I feel like that I just mentioned, because you know, it's so hard to get people to care about leadership and how the country's being ran when, you know, they turn on the spigot and fresh water comes to the to their hands. And
amazing,
you know, the grocery store is 5 minutes around the corner, and
everything,
you know,
in
want. California are very urban environments. You know, you can go to Whole Foods and feel good about eating vegan, although that's terrible for you. And
exactly.
You know, that's why I think we have so much nonsense in our culture, because everything is easy, and there's so much convenience that we literally have an abundance of time to think about stupid things. And because nobody's having to deal with largely challenging ideas or physically demanding tasks to have basic survival needs met, whether it's shelter or food or security, you know, basic principles of Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah,
we've allowed the inferiors and unintellectuals to get to the top portions of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where they're thinking about spirituality and they're thinking about
you're describing the fall of Rome, man. Like this is how Rome fell. It's the same thing. People just got bored and they started doing all the dumb shit that we're doing now. Like, we're not unique. Like, I love that everyone's, oh, it's not going to happen to the United States. Really? Like, where the fuck did you get off and think that we're like the one great civilization that's not going to experience like a decline? Like, I mean, you're describing Rome at the end.
Yeah, but I would arguably say that we're describing every country in the world that's a first world country.
Yeah. But no one's at this level, I would say. No one's experiencing what we're experiencing, I would argue.
Yeah, I would
people involved.
I would generally say that's the case, but you know, when you look at just sheer population, we're child's play compared to India and China.
Yeah, but I mean, quality of life is also not really equitable to those other two countries. You got a real superior class and the rest of the people. It's hard to take care of 1.5 billion people.
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, we have 330
330
million people, and
Yeah.
there's and some people would say this is cynical, but there's always bad apples, right? So
Yes. No,
what's the
true.
percentage of having a bad apple?
That's free will. That's what it gets you. You get the
Is
opposite
it
times the good.
right? Is it 1%? Is it 1/10%? Okay, so 1% out of 100 would be one person. 1/10% would be 1/10% would be 1 out of every 1,000. So you figure we got what, 330 million people here, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of bad apples.
There's a couple million bad apples.
Yeah, let's take a look at all the prisons. I mean, it's not just them. And then take a look at, here's my thing. This is, like, and this kind of falls into your world because, we're talking about AI and computers and all this stuff. And then the downside of that gets into like the scamming, the phishing, the spearing, all the stuff that people do to go after people's security, their data, their money, all that stuff financially through internet targeting, right? So there's someone who's clearly a very bright individual who's chosen to just be a fucking asshole and to take advantage of people who don't know any better, right? So there's your bad apples in the modern world, right? It's not just like the guy who wants to hang out on the street corner and look for a weak target to rob. Those people still exist. But now we've high-classed it up a bit, right? Now we got the guys who sit on the corner of the internet looking to rob somebody.
Oh yeah. No questions about it. Now, the other thing that I'd say too is if we set 1/10% of the population at 350 million, that's 350,000, right? People are roughly bad people. And now if you look at just states by population, I mean, that would be like saying half of North Dakota is inherently all the bad people. I mean, what happens if all these people congregate, or we got 50 states, that roughly can put 7,000 people. I mean, 350,000 divided by 50 states. Yeah, about 7,000 of these crazy people in every state. That's a lot of people. That's in some cases a whole small town. And now they can go and cultivate these nonsensical ideas and go capture the weak, I shouldn't say weak-minded, but those who are easily influenced, or like we talked about earlier, those who are needing a mentor or a strong role model.
Soft targets, yeah.
Right? Easy targets.
Yep.
So these things are concerning, but I think they've always existed in some form or another.
Oh yeah.
I just think that the age that information, carries and travels is just, it's significantly faster. And, maybe, just maybe, we have reached our capabilities as a species.
I have argued, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this because I know, again, you're younger. I don't know how much younger, but I think you're like 10 years younger, right? So you've definitely experienced the world differently from me, but you've also experienced a lot of the same things at an age where you were old enough to kind of figure out and know what was going on. So I think you're in a good age. You're very different than someone who's 20, 21 years old, right? Who just, they grew up in a post 9/11 world where you didn't, and where I grew up when it happened. And it was a very like, okay, what am I going to do next type of thing, right?
Yeah.
But so I bring that up because if we believe the 50s, the 60s, all of those technological advancements that took place, whether it was putting a man in space, then it was landing on the moon, then it was, the evolution of the space age. And then you see now to where I can hold this and I've got everything, all of human history, anything I want to access at any given time right here. And yet I would argue this, while it should have made us a much more smarter species, as you've just described, we should be, but we're not. I'd argue that because we have so much at our fingertips and accessible at any given time, it's made us intellectually lazy, and not the opposite, where it's like, oh, you want, I've said this again. I know I'm going to go on a tangent here, but I took my daughter to the Sacramento library several years back because I wanted to show her the Dewey Decimal System. She had no idea what that was. Right. So I was like, no, the Dewey Decimal System is like, you used to have to go to a library and you had to know what book you wanted to look for. You had to know where to find the author's name, and then you had to write it down. Then you had to go and actually pull it from the shelf. When she's just like, it was a foreign fucking concept to her. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go show you physically how to do this. And then what do you know? It doesn't even exist at the Sacramento library. Right. Anyway, but I was able to explain it. So my point is, I would agree with you 100% that we've peaked, and we've done it to ourselves, though. We haven't like created or lost access to information. We've given ourselves so much that maybe we just refuse to acknowledge or access the stuff that we need to continue the climb. And we're just like, oh, well, can't get much better. We'll just wait for the new iPhone to come out.
Yeah, I would argue that we're at this very interesting time where we have surpassed probably what the means of our biology were really meant to do. I would say that, the COVID pandemic or plandemic, depending on, who's listening and what their thoughts are on it.
Most are on your side, don't worry.
Prove that, how dare you label me? But
you just assume what side I was on.
Yeah, you just assumed what side I was on. Don't label me or this interview's over. But anyway, the point I was trying to make was, the pandemic largely brought out the importance of having community and being healthy. And I think that the abundance of information, right, and knowledge that's at our fingertips had taken us biologically away from what is important to us as mammals inherently. That's deep down in the evolution of our DNA. And to get to your point, just because we have access to information and all this knowledge, that's not wisdom. Wisdom is arguably what people need more than anything else.
That's a good point.
And wisdom is going to come from experience, mentorship, role models, and critical thought and strategy and planning, and then execution on top of that. And so when I consider, where are we at? I think if you looked back at any point in time in history, they would make a very similar argument to what it is that you're making, whether it was with encyclopedias or whether it was with the internet or whether it was with cars or, whatever else. The reality, I think, is that, do we have a constant ability to maintain our biological humanity? And, what is that level of importance? Because, the fundamental irony of our paths is that through becoming better, we will either make ourselves extinct by basically becoming cyborgs, where robots are downloading our consciousness.
We already have the reproduction declining in
Right.
many countries.
Yeah. And that's an entirely different issue.
Yeah. let's
But you get where I'm going here.
Yeah, I do.
The reproductive issues, I think, are that's a very interesting conversation. I think it is financial obligations and the fact that we don't teach finance as a skill set broadly across the world.
That's so weird to me. I've never understood why. Like, it's kind of like you either are drawn to finance or you have to go figure it out for yourself. Like, no one taught me that shit. My parents weren't going to teach me because they didn't know. My brother's done really well because he's took an interest in that and he's educated himself on that. But I largely don't know shit for the most part from most people. I know basics. But yeah, I think you're onto something with like, yeah, well, we don't need to tell you about money or any of that stuff.
Finance is power. Finance is control, right? Finance is freedom. And so, if you look at those who have been in power, they seek to retain it. And those who don't have power seek to obtain it. And it's this battle that has been forever fought in the history of our species. And so gold, silver, fiat currencies, largely dubbed as finance, has been a way to control that. And you think about, the thing about we think about what we spoke of earlier, where we said, taking risk is probably the least risky thing to do. And why do not a lot of people do that? Because they don't have good role models or it's not taught. Well, the system was not really ever built to create free thinkers, right?
Yeah.
Free thinkers, I believe, and entrepreneurs were the byproduct of this experiment in democracy that we call the United States. I think that largely the education system was meant to mold law abiding citizens and rule following citizens, to keep the machine going, because there's order and organization, and there's chaos and disorganization. It's like you walk into somebody's house that's all messy and everything else, you immediately start to feel uncomfortable. If you walk into somebody's house and things are organized and there's a place for everything, you feel a lot more confident and relaxed being there. And I think that
That's a good point. It's a good analogy.
it's the same.
Yeah. I want to, because we stumbled into finance, so I'm just curious. Where do you come down on the whole, the digital currency thing, whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's Dogecoin, whatever the million fucking coins? Do you think this stuff is sustainable and legit, or is this just, little modern day snake oil where some people are going to get wealthy on it, but for the most part, there's no place long term for this stuff? Because if you cut out government, how do you get any sort of regulation, of course, but also how do you back it? How do you God, what's the word I'm looking for? How do you guarantee it if it's some sort of financial deposit and investment that you've made? Or is it just, hey, you invest at your own risk type of thing?
Well, there were many questions packed into that, but the first one was
Thanks.
what are my thoughts on digital currencies?
Yeah.
So specifically what we'll call DeFi, or decentralized finance. Most items or most tokens or NFTs built on top of the Ethereum blockchain is riddled with fraud. And largely, I would say there's a lot of predatory practices in there. But it's rooted in a very, very good solution to the problem of irresponsible governments and central banks.
Okay.
So the fundamental premise is you have a store of value that you don't need anything tangible but the internet. And you could move your money across borders and across countries, and nobody could control that, and nobody could devalue that. Who's a government?
Tax it. Yeah.
Or tax it.
Yeah.
And, I think that that's a very attractive marketing pitch, right?
Yeah.
That's very attractive. However, like anything else, the devil's in the details. And so you look at the FTC going after Binance here in the United States, saying that they're offering basically an illegal security exchange, or I don't know the exact lingo, don't quote me, but they're aggressively going after Binance. And what I was reading about it was basically saying that most of the volume in crypto is what is being done by the large hedge funds in the stock market, where they are literally trading cryptocurrencies and microtransactions to each other, and they are driving volume of trades, and they are moving the prices in some way that aligns with their interests, or they have an incentive to do so. And when you start to understand that, the whole thought process of crypto is free of people controlling it, the reality is totally not. The large exchanges and the people who create the coins and the tokens outside of Bitcoin, they have the same fundamental problems. They're just hidden in the shadows. And so if I was looking at a digital currency, I would only be looking at Bitcoin. But even then, the largest holders of Bitcoins are these exchanges and what they generally call whales. And they have an incentive to control the market if they have a large volume of the Bitcoin that's available. And they can have an arrangement between parties to drive the prices back up and forth. And they really have no skin in the game. They're just creating volume. And so this is the same problem that we have with hedge funds in the stock market, with options and shorts. This is the whole saga that you saw with GameStop, where basically
so crazy to me.
They shorted Melvin Capital shorted more shares than were publicly available of GameStop. And so when you realize that that is totally illegal, it's called a naked short. An option basically says one person owns a stock and they're willing to make a bet that the price isn't going to move in another way. And somebody else goes and says, I'll take that bet. Here's the money up front. And if it goes the way the person who owns the stock thinks it's going to go, they get to keep that money. But then if it goes the opposite way, then they're obligated to sell those shares to the person who purchased the option. Or that person can sell that option to somebody else who would then have the right to purchase those shares from the person who originally owned them. Well, that's what the whole GameStop saga was Reddit with Wall Street Bets figured out that Melvin Capital didn't have all of those shares. And so they convinced all of the retards on the internet, and they call themselves retards.
It's not, this is not Alan calling anybody a retard.
Right. This is what they literally call themselves, dumb money and retards. And they went and bought up all the shares of GameStop and refused to sell. And that's why you had these crazy swings of 20, 30%, because now guess what was happening? The total amount of volume of shares was so incredibly low that they were having to spend ridiculous amounts of money to purchase the price, because the people who had them, who were willing to sell them, were saying, this is the only price we're willing to sell it at. Well, they're obligated from that short because they got to pay out that person those shares in so many days. And what they found out was that they didn't give them the shares in so many days. Melvin Capital would have to start paying penalties and interest on top of that. And that's how they lost, I don't know how many tens of billions of dollars.
God.
But that was how this whole thing went down. And so now, to answer your question, I think digital currencies are just as fucked as fiat currencies. And now you know why.
Yeah, I mean, I know why. There's a lot of that stuff that just it's just over my head, Like, I think
but have people made a lot of money with it? Yes, absolutely. I know people who have made boatloads of money with it.
But you got to doubt why you can, right? You can't. Do you think it's long-term holding?
I know people who have lost boatloads of money on it too, as well.
Yeah, I do too, unfortunately, like a lot.
And so I think it's like anything else. You need a healthy, and again, I'm not a financial, I don't provide financial advice. I'm not your fiduciary.
Yeah, right.
But, you have to determine what's your level of risk and what assets do you want to hold. And, what is your investment outlook? And those are generally things to consider. But I think the question you were really getting at is what I think of USDC, US dollar coin, or no, the central bank's version of a digital currency is, I think, what you were getting at. I think it's a fucking terrible idea. I think it is the worst idea. You've seen how the government handled the pandemic, and you see how they blatantly lied to people. And you've seen how cozy and in bed they are with the pharmaceutical industry, and how the Democrats used to be I will generally say this. The Democrats used to be the party of logic and reason and freedom.
Yeah.
Right. And nonsense
have changed for sure.
And over COVID, they became the party of nonsense and the party of censorship.
And they're the Warhawks now, which is weird.
And the war. Yeah. And Warhawks. And it's like, what happened, And so my point is, if it can change that quick, the party of logic and reason and progressivism can lose their minds and start censoring people. It's really not that far-fetched to say, hey, if we have a central digital currency and they implement an ESG score because Soros's son has billions and billions of dollars, and he wants to make it to where these large public companies can't get financing unless their ESG scores are in a certain area or a certain rating. And so to get these ESG scores, they got to start pushing all this green nonsense and everything else. And I'm not a climate denier, but I'm just saying a lot of the things that they push in relation to it are nonsense. And so now to do that, they're saying, oh, you can only fly so much when all these people are going to Davos and the
Whatever
World
the fuck
Economic Forum, and they do what they want on their private jets. But now you're using a centralized currency from the United States government, and you go to purchase your second airline ticket in 3 months, and they go, I'm sorry, you can't do that because you're killing
You've
the
already flown.
environment.
Yeah, you've already flown too much for the year. That's funny.
Like, this isn't that far-fetched.
It's not. No, you're right. It's 100% right. I mean, we're still paying 9/11 taxes if you ever look at your itemized fucking airline ticket. 9/11 security fee. You still pay that. How fucking fucked up is that? When does that go away? I mean, it's like when I was going out to the restaurants with Napa, it was like, oh, I'm going to pay the COVID tax. Like, when does that stop? I don't even think it has, because when I was last out before I moved, that COVID fucking surcharge was still on receipts in downtown Napa.
It's ridiculous.
It's just it's like anything else. Taxes or
the biggest
that's
lie
in government, they never go away. They're there forever.
Well, this is why we should be very skeptical about giving the government any form of power, because they have not proven they have a track record to give it up or to give it back. If anything, they've proven they have a track record to ask for more and continue to be irresponsible.
And who's been the biggest violator of that since post 9/11? It's the fucking Republican Party. I've said this a million times on this.
It's the Republican Party, 100%.
Patriot Act, TSA, Department of Homeland Security. You think any of them are going away? No.
And now they're bitching and complaining that
military force from 2001 that we're still using against to go bullshit around the fucking Middle East. No one cares because, oh, well, it's already there. We already voted on that 20 years ago.
Dude, I had a buddy who was special forces in the Air Force. He was part of the Halo team, the high altitude, low opening guys. Actually, I don't know if it was Air Force or what it was, but he's
pararescue. Pararescue.
Yeah. He was telling me the countries he was in and the shit they were doing. I'm like, those are not countries we are actively engaged in skirmishes with. He goes, oh, no, it's all black ops shit.
Oh, yeah. It's all there. It was great. Like,
and I mean, like, these are countries that, like, you would go to vacation to.
Yeah.
And he's all like, oh, yeah, we were in combat there for 8 hours, like full blown gunfights, everything else. And boom, got the fuck out. That's how I broke both my shoulders.
Yeah, well, I mean, America's not ready for the conversation of what their special operations forces are doing.
No, the only thing
there's also not enough of them to keep doing the shit that we ask them to do. They're just, they're when I break down, like when someone asks me, hey, what are the special forces? I'm like, okay, well, you know what? I want you to imagine a pro sports team or a pro sports league, right? Anybody can play baseball. Anybody can play basketball or football. There's only 1% of 1% that get to the NFL, to Major League Baseball, to the NBA. And that's our special forces community. All right? So what that tells you is the rest of your conventional forces are plentiful. There's a lot of people like you and I, Alan, that go and we play fucking softball once a week. Okay? However, how many professional baseball players are there in the world? How many professional football players? All right. That's what you're dealing with in terms of numbers, right? Not a lot. And the things that we ask them to do constantly, continuously for the last 22 plus years in this whole global war on terror bullshit that we've been immersed in for the last post 9/11, like I said, it's not sustainable. And a lot of those guys, probably like your buddy, who's probably your age, if not younger or older, a lot of those guys are at the point where they've dealt with this their entire career and they're starting to feel like I am. All right. You're starting to create a jaded individual who's watched their government literally lie to them.
Yeah.
They've watched the failure in the Afghanistan withdrawal in August of 2021. They've watched failure and lie after lie sold under the guise of national security. And there's a moment where at some point these people are going to stop playing the game, and you're not going to have anyone behind them because we already have that issue. That's a real thing. Like the recruiting issues are already real, but now you're going to start losing the guys you've spent and invested so much in over the last 20 years because they're getting out
Well, and largely, not only are they getting out, but we abuse our special
Oh,
operators, and
it's not
and
sustainable.
we abuse in the term, or in the definition of overuse.
Yeah,
And the thing is America doesn't have the appetite for war,
not at
and
all.
there are a lot of
No, not at
fucking
all.
bad people out there, and there are a lot of bad cells, and not just bad governments, but generally, in second and third world countries, there are militias and there are groups that are
Yeah,
doing harm.
we're not ready for a near peer conflict, and the stuff that they push on the American public, we're not ready. I hate to say this, but we're not, we're pushing the gender equality and all this shit, and
We're pushing a bunch of nonsense
we're
and a
not ready
bunch
to
of
see a lot of
bullshit.
this shit unfold in real time, where women are getting captured, and you're the worst possible scenarios you can mention are unfolding live on fucking CNN and Fox News. America's not ready for that.
No, they're not, because America's full of too many soft people who are
It's true.
unhealthy,
Very
both physically and mentally, and they couldn't handle the truth. They couldn't. I mean, the government's worried about, JFK and 9/11 and UFOs. It's like, yeah, okay, we knew our government probably had a hand in, dealing with 9/11. The guy who owned the two buildings miraculously, like 2 weeks before 9/11 happened, took out an insurance policy that just so happened to include terrorism when that was never a thing, and got paid out like, some ridiculous amount of billions of dollars. And by the way, he always ate, breakfast on the top floor, but this day, mysteriously, he just wasn't happened to be there. And, there's so many coincidences like that
Windows of
video.
the world. I was in that restaurant on September 9th.
Yeah.
You know that?
Yeah. And so you get it. You're there. And it's like the day
It's
before
nuts.
9/11, they go, hey, we have $2.6 trillion missing from the military budget.
I'm just yelling at Frank. Sorry.
That's okay. And then all of a sudden, where all those records were held in the Pentagon just blows up. There's way too many things here that are circumstantial, for a reasonable and logical person to not go, and ask some questions. But the thought process is, that is child's play in comparison to what the real world is like, and the fact that real evil is out there.
Oh yeah.
Folks on their smartphones here in our nice, beautiful first world country, they think tyranny is misgendering somebody. They think tyranny is,
Using the wrong pronouns in an email or something.
feeling guilty for, being born a certain way.
Yeah. Oh, there's
or making a
absolutely.
lot of money. No, tyranny is, you're going to get your hand cut off, or your family's going to get killed because you said something, or they're going to take your children from you, and they're going to turn them into militias and the people you won't even know or recognize, or they're going to take your daughter and they're going to sell them into sex trafficking.
Yep.
There are some brutal and horrific things. I would just encourage you to go on 4chan and go take a look at some of those things. I mean, God, just go look at
the real world. And like I said, I've been blessed to experience over 21 countries in this planet. Right. And I've seen some really stupid and really evil shit. And I've always said that for the most part, most of the problems that Americans pretend to feel that they're experiencing are self-created.
100%.
Self-created. Like, we have everything and anything that we could possibly want and do, and we'd rather sit around doing what you just said and just, oh, you misgendered me, or you won't refer to me by my preferred, pronouns, or you spoke mean about me on the internet. Like, these are things that are just not tangible for a lot of countries on this planet, and we're a very insulated and spoiled society. And we're also not ready for a lot of the things that we think are out there on the horizon. And the only way to get back to that point is to experience them, I'm afraid of. So,
yeah. And that's real life. That's the point of being a human, is to do tough things and have a sense of accomplishment. And, toxic masculinity is anything
no such
but.
thing. There's no such
right?
thing. It's just masculinity. There's no such thing as toxic masculinity.
What I find is, the older I get and the more people I talk to, look, we all have our ways and our preferences and our ideas and on what makes us happy and how we would like to live. But I have never met somebody who hasn't had a sense of sort of a biological role within them. either a protector or a provider
Yeah.
or a nurturer or somebody who's really caring. And the irony is that those do align with your biological sex. Over time they do tend to align with them. And the fact that we disincentivize and we sort of demoralize those feelings in the development of those skills um, is truly troubling. We basically have taught young children to hate their race, hate their gender, hate their country. And that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, that's not sustainable either.
I mean, it's a recipe for disaster. It's actually one of the reasons why, like, I'm seriously considering, starting to get involved in the politics, because the thought process is, well, why would you want to get involved in the politics? Or, nobody's willing to. It's like, well, that's the perfect reason why.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm with you 100%. I agree. I would encourage you to do that, especially where you're at. You're in a position to be successful. You're not in San Francisco, I would say, where it's like, well, I mean, you can try and be a disruptor, but it's probably not going to work out, right? You're at least
No,
in a
I'm going to
point
be
where you can
hyper local.
Yeah, well, you can, and that's what's most important, right? What I had a buddy who says this all the time. Most important politician you can vote and elect in your life is your local county sheriff, because what they can do and the power that they can exercise on the externally is more than and greater than any other politician you'll vote for.
Yeah.
And that's what people don't even care about. They get so consumed with the thoughts of, oh, it's Trump versus Biden. It's like, you might want to look a little further down the local line before you really worry about two old guys yelling and screaming at each other who are going to call themselves president. Because there's a lot more people along the way that have direct impact over your life than them.
Yes, I agree 100%. And I was just talking to a guy at work about this topic, and he's a hardcore Democrat, and he literally told me, he goes, Democrats are the party of logic and reason. I said, maybe they used to be, but not anymore. And I proceeded to tell him the things of the last 3 years that were just nonsensical, and follow the science with COVID, but don't follow the science with gender and ideology and sex. Is like, it's incredibly confusing to have an inconsistent message. And so, then I also told him, it's like, I used to be a Republican, but I became an independent, because, there are cases on the Republican side. It's like the same fucking thing.
Yeah, it is. It's the uniparty. We talked about this a few days ago in the chat. Like, there's no difference anymore.
No, there's not. There's the political class and there's the non-political class. Right. And, the only difference is the Democrats feel bad for having money and the Republicans really don't. That's the best way that I could sum it up.
Yeah.
And the system is more along the lines of your ideology. And the guy literally told me, he goes, well, I'm not gonna, have a protest vote because that's stupid and that would make my vote not matter. And I said, well, what can you do about it? And he was all like, well, I'm not going to do anything about it because I can't fix the system. I said, well, you can't talk to your friends about, maybe getting the Democratic Party back to its original base. And he goes, no, because what's that going to do? I said, well, it might change their votes, or it might change the way that they think. And, they might go tell 2 or 3 people, and those people might go tell 2 or 3 people. And now you've touched 30 or 40.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, that's, not going to work, whatever. And then he literally gave the argument of like, well, you could always go run for office and everything else, but you're not going to change anything. And I was just like, okay, boomer, like, you're old and senile, and you're this rich white dude who lives in $1 million house and, supports Bernie Sanders and everything else. And you're an entrepreneur and you own a business and you make a lot of money. And
that's
you're telling me that, you're a Democrat and you're super logical and that you support everything that's doing, and you would never vote for anybody other than Biden because vote along the party lines. I said, well, that kind of inherently goes against being logical and reasonable.
Yeah. Imagine that.
And that's I think is fundamentally the problem, is everybody's so focused on the federal politics.
Yep.
And I just want to be focused on the things that are directly in our backyard.
I agree. And like I said, that, when you're Joe Rogan, I don't know if you ever saw his stand up in 2016 before the election. when it was Trump versus Clinton. It was in San Francisco. It was actually, it's a great stand up to go back and watch. But he makes this argument about how the whole concept of the president is just dumb at this point. It's dumb. You know, there's 330 million people, and you got one guy who's just in charge of everybody. Like, it's dumb because no one's really paying attention to him.
And it doesn't matter. And when they say deep state, I don't think a lot of people truly understand what the deep state is. Deep state are the non-elected officials and the people who have worked their way up into the high ranks of the government,
what we've talked about. Yeah,
who really control things.
absolutely.
So this is in the DOJ, this is in federal bodies like the FDA, and the folks in DARPA and everything.
Yeah.
The military, the people who are within it, and then the people who retire and become contractors. These are the folks who really run the country. And they're like, well, I've survived an idiot in office, and I've survived their term and their presidency. Like, it's not that big of a deal. We'll get to the next one. Those are the folks that really run the country.
Yep.
And the president has really no ability to control them. He can appoint heads that provide general guidance. Yeah. Like the attorney general, but they don't have to fucking listen to the attorney general. Right. And, at the end of the day, it's like, if you want to get anything done, you have to get somebody from the political class that knows how to get along with the bureaucrats. And at the end of the day, it's the same thing, which means that the pharmaceutical companies are, they outnumber, I think it's like 2-1, the entire Congress in Washington, D.C. Just the pharmaceutical industry, the lobbyists, 2-1. Every House rep, everybody in the Senate, right? Everybody in the judiciary.
Power in numbers. What have we talked about already?
It's like, so you want to talk about, an ability to change. It's like, okay, I know how we can change things. Let me just focus on nutrition. If people focused on nutrition and they started eating healthy foods and they refused to take pharmaceutical products and they heavily considered what they actually needed vaccines for, we could change the entire system fundamentally, because the largest contributor of money in our political system is the pharmaceutical industries, period. And so just like we have all these boycotts with Bud Light and Target and cancel culture back in the day with, all the social justice riots and everything else, protests, if the consumer can have that much of an impact, I mean, the pharmaceutical companies are nothing more than private companies and sometimes public.
Yep.
Can do the same thing there, and we'll just, cripple them.
I'm surprised we haven't already started something like that, given the COVID thing.
Joe Rogan is a force of nature when it comes to media. And I think the pivot is happening. The first step is the food industry. Mm-hmm. So not purchasing products that have the seed oils, not purchasing products that have all the refined carbohydrates.
That's hard to look at, right?
Like, it's very hard. You have to be very knowledgeable, but the reality is it's the only way to become healthy.
Yeah.
And what will eventually happen is the food industries are capitalists. And so they'll realize that people's buying preferences are shifting. And so they'll start producing more of those products. And if they don't, they'll die and new competitors will come into the marketplace. And what that will mean is people will start eating more healthy and the food industry will start changing, which means that the subsidies from the federal government will start changing because they will more closely align to the ingredients that are needed in masses to produce those foods, which then will eventually get to the pharmaceutical companies, because people aren't going to be having to go to the doctor because they're not going to be healthy, and rates of cancer are going to decline because inflammation is largely declining. And, the only case against this that I would argue is they've given so many people the COVID vaccine that, they've arguably got half of the country who will forever have long-term health problems from getting those vaccines. And I'm not saying that the vaccines didn't work or they weren't ineffective. I'm just saying we do not know the long-term side effects of them. And so I think there's going to be a healthy, market there for dealing with the byproducts of that. And I think so. I think the pharmaceutical and the medical industries will, have that as a small little cash cow. But, the constant pushing of pharmaceuticals is largely problematic. And so I think the first step of solving it starts in the grocery stores.
Yeah. I would agree 100% with that. And I always talked about, man, I've said this probably somewhere on here before, but we talk about looking at ingredients because, I go back to when we started this. Yes. I did make a conscious decision like, hey, I was going to lose 20 pounds when I got out here, right? A lot of that had to do with diet, but for the most part, I do what I do and I don't really change because I never really ate unhealthily. But I would challenge anybody, just go to your grocery store. And before you go, if you don't already know, look up the ingredients that are in ice cream. Ice cream's got 4 basic things in it. It's cream, milk, sugar, and salt. Then go and pick up something in your grocery store and look at all the ingredients that are in it. Look how ice cream has changed, which is why there's only one brand of ice cream I will still buy to this day, and that's Tillamook Farms, right? It comes from Oregon because they adhere on most of their flavors to the original recipe. That's it. That's all that goes into it. It's about as natural as you can get. But if you go look at any other product, you're going to find 40 different fucking ingredients in ice cream. That's not ice cream. And
Yeah,
that's all your food stuff at this point. Like
it's inflammation hell.
Right.
It should largely be if a food product has, actually we should say it like this, you should be buying food ingredients. And food ingredients are anything that's largely going to be non-packaged. They're single ingredient whole foods.
Right.
And if you're
They
buying
always
a
tell you
food
stay to
product,
the external out. Don't go to the aisles. Stay on the outside of a grocery store. Right. It's like basic shopping, right? Because that's where the real food is.
Exactly. And if you're going to buy a food product, it should have 5 ingredients or less. That's generally a good rule of thumb to start.
Okay.
And
the first ingredient probably shouldn't be fucking corn syrup or whatever the other shit that they throw in there as the first ingredient, which is just another clever way of saying sugar to get you to buy it because it tastes good.
Right. And well, I always look at it like your food is going to disrupt your endocrine system. Okay. But disrupt in a good or bad way. So refined carbohydrates, corn sugars, seed oils. These are things that are going to, specifically seed oils are going to mess with your endocrine system. I mean, imagine this. If you eat a bunch of blackberries or eat a bunch of berries and you take a crap, there's seeds that are still in that.
Yeah.
And basically your digestive process gets the germination process started. Same thing with deers or whatever else. And then in your scat, it starts growing, etc. Well, that's the natural process. Your body is not supposed to digest those seeds. So what did we do in our infinite wisdom? We said, hey, well, we're the food industry needs to take all of these seeds that come from all these foods that they process, and we need to find a way to make money with it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take those seeds, thousands and thousands of them, and then we're going to condense them down and bleach them and get rid of the smells. And we're going to make these wonderful things called oils, like vegetable oil, canola oil,
Absolutely awful.
sunflower oil. Well, what this
is grapeseed oil? Is that another one?
Yeah, grapeseed oils in there. Anything that's got a ridiculous amount of a certain type of, man, I can't speak to it because just go listen to Paul Saladino. He has that unlocked. That's carnivore.
No, that's good. No, you're absolutely right, because it does have a negative effect, just not only just on humans, but specifically on men.
Yeah, and the problem is, so you have all these chemicals in the seeds that have, it's part of their biological process to reproduce, and we're not ever supposed to digest those. Well, now all of a sudden you have those chemicals in a digestible format for the human body in the form of oil. So now it's disrupting your endocrine system, right? So seed oils you should get rid of immediately out of your diet, and you will feel better in 2 to 3 days.
Oh, totally. 100%.
And that's the number one thing that I can tell people. But the problem is only like maybe 5 or 6% of all foods in the grocery store don't have seed oils.
I mean, Alan, if I'm honest with you, if I don't use olive oil, I probably 80% of everything I cook with is just butter.
I cook with, I
Just
mean,
butter, man.
I have
Like,
a whole drawer full of Kerrygold butter for this exact
exactly.
reason.
That's the same one I eat. Like that's the greatest thing you can do. And like, I go back to the way the start of this when I introduced Frank. Look, the French do two things very well. They cook and they drink. They drink wine, and they eat amazing food and they use
I would
amazing
argue three
ingredients.
things, but one is inappropriate.
It's not even appropriate. But okay, but that's not well, that's will be the follow-up. But yeah,
That'll
I
be the
mean,
late night podcast.
welcome to the late night podcast. Yeah, I mean, it's just butter and wine. I mean, look at the basis of their food. It's just people in America have been conditioned to think like, oh, that's so unhealthy. It's like, really? Have you seen them?
Well, and the other crazy thing too is people in America, we have the worst leaders from a food perspective.
Oh God.
You know,
Well, a lot of this ties down. A lot of it goes back to World War II and the preservatives that came out of that, and they never really left our mass society once the war ended.
well, yeah, we have this deal with the devil that we basically made when you talk about the food pyramid,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the food pyramid was
Yeah.
basically like, hey, look, we have people who are malnourished.
Yeah.
They're malnourished because they don't have lots of money, and we don't have the availability of foods for them.
Right.
And so our solution with the food pyramid, and this is largely the origins of the food pyramid, which you could argue is more of a marketing ploy, but these were the basic things that they were looking for. Predominantly, we needed to get calories at a low cost that tasted good to people who are malnourished, because at the time of the food pyramid, this was actually a thing. We had people in the United States that were malnourished. And so the solution which they achieved, and this is not a get out of jail free card for the food industry or the FDA or anything, but that's what they started really pushing, the really refined carbohydrates and the corn syrups and everything else. And so they were able to achieve really good tasting, high caloric food, high caloric intake foods that solved that problem. But the metric was wrong. And what they're finding out now is it's not necessarily about calories, it's about bioavailability of nutrients. And so bioavailability means, for if I'm explaining this to a fifth grader, it's basically
Yes.
like not all nutrients are created the same. So the body only has a certain ability to digest certain forms of proteins or certain forms of minerals or certain forms of vitamins or carbohydrates.
Right.
And so this is why people who eat like very high meat or very large animal-based diets, when they go to the bathroom, they have a much smaller stool. If you eat a lot of vegetables and everything else and tons of fiber and chips and all these other things, you'll notice you take these really, really large stools. And a lot of that, this is the great equation. This is the great explanation of bioavailability. If you have less coming out, your body is able to digest and break down more of it and use more of it for energy.
That's interesting. I never heard it like that. That's interesting.
That's and what they're finding is with like these vegan diets on a perspective of macronutrients for proteins and carbohydrates and fats and minerals and vitamins, that they all have these things that sort of check every box, but the bioavailability of them is incredibly low in comparison to an animal-based diet.
That's amazing. That's another thing. Like, if we just go back to talk about society and like the problems that, like I say, Americans create most of them. Let's talk about that diet. You think, 600 years ago, they gave a fuck about being a fucking vegan, or they just wanted to eat so they could not die?
Well, there's the fallacy that eating animals is a bad thing, not only morally, but for the environment. And I would agree.
Only for humans, I guess, because every other animal on this planet's, they're fine.
Well, if you drive through Fresno, California, I would disagree with you a little bit.
Okay.
You drive by Harris Ranch and it smells horrible.
Yeah, yes,
it smells like cow manure.
And you can stay there. They got an amazing restaurant and hotel. It's great.
Yeah, but it is.
That smell amazing.
I've heard a really good analogy. This is incredibly inappropriate, for somebody who's Jewish. Please forgive me, but this is a great representation of. They call it Cowschwitz.
Oh,
because literally it is where they process and feed in very unnatural environments thousands and thousands of cattle. And so, if you put my analogy into perspective there by saying Cowschwitz, I mean, that's basically what it is. This is not a Napa or Sonoma hillside that's
Yeah.
green and the sun is
Right.
out
Yeah.
and
No,
it's
it's just
70
dirt.
degrees.
It's just
It's
dirt.
dirt and nastiness in the armpit of California. And
Yep.
it's a little bit of a desert environment, and they're eating corn, wheat, and soy. And these things are not what those animals are supposed to be doing normally. Like, for example,
Yeah. They shouldn't be
the
eating that.
parallel is humans are not supposed to be eating highly processed foods from grocery stores. Look how fat and unhealthy we've become.
Oh yeah.
The same thing is happening with cattle. And so
Good point.
I
Good
get,
point.
I sort of emphasize with, or not emphasize, but I feel for what the vegans are saying, but the fallacy that they're rooted in is that all cattle are bad for the environment because of Harris Ranch. Well, there's such things as regenerative agriculture, right?
Yeah.
And regenerative farming. And so you can buy, meat that is, sustainable, and sure, an animal, yes, has to die. And I don't think you can ever get around that, but it's much more beneficial for the environment to do it in that way. And so, yeah, it's more expensive, but the reality is, I think that's where the vegan argument falls apart, because they're rooted in, because one thing is bad or most things are bad, all things are bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, that's that. And so I emphasize, I feel where the vegans are coming from. But on our last podcast we had with Curtis, at the end of the podcast, we actually brought up a vegan placenta versus somebody who ate a high animal based diet placenta. And the
Like in childbirth?
visual, yes, the organ of life, the placenta, the visual aspects of the placenta, one looked incredibly unhealthy, and the
Yeah.
other one looked really dense and vibrant and full of life. And the one that looked unhealthy was vegan, and the one that looked incredibly healthy was the one that had the animal-based diet. And here's the irony. My wife, Katie, she delivered our first daughter, Brooklyn, about 10
Yeah.
days after her due date. And they were like, man, your placenta is doing really well. Because if you go too late, what they worry about is your placenta not working, which is basically what gets all the nutrients to the baby.
Yeah. Right.
Well, we had a friend who had to deliver a couple weeks early because they said her placenta was failing. Well, guess what? She's a vegan. So now I have some anecdotal evidence in my life. And
Yeah.
also, from this comparison, you guys can go look at it, vegan placenta versus meat eating placenta. And so there's some anecdotal evidence to the fact that, bioavailability and nutrient density really, really matters. And the lie that we were told was like leafy greens are, really good for you. The problem is largely we as humans like to think we understand things, but we only know what we know at the time, and what we know at the time we pronounce as truth, right? Instead of something different. And I would argue that this is what we know today, subject to tomorrow. And that is entirely different from truth. And so getting back to the leafy greens comment, it was like, that's a superfood, but it's not a superfood if you compare it to beef liver.
Right.
Beef liver makes it look like child's play in terms of nutrient density. There's some shit the Liver King has incredibly right, besides lying about steroids.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I mean, that reminds me of what you're saying. It's like, I mean, this, you do it, your brother does it, I mean, that's how our softball team started, was from fucking CrossFit, right? But
Correct.
what's the CrossFit prescription, right? What's fitness in 100 words? You eat meat and vegetables, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, and no sugar. Well, that's the first start to it, right? That's your diet. And then everything else comes from that. But that's essentially it.
Yeah.
And I would never be one of those people to be like, you have to maintain 100% when it comes. Because look, I have a sweet tooth, always have, right? I love my ice cream. I love my cookies from time to time. I like sugar once in a while. But for the most part, Monday through Friday, it's just vegetables and meat. That's it. Maybe rice once in a while because, if I feel weak, I eat rice. That's pretty much how it comes down to. And then, the vegetables and the fruits, those things. Never once have I been, when I go to a grocery store, do I just be like, man, I just want to get nothing but processed food and frozen. And like, I've never been that way, which does come from my parents. That's been a
Yeah.
good side because my dad, he was a bodybuilder. He taught us kind of how to eat and work out and train. And my mom's a nurse, so she never ate poorly. She was smart from that side of it. But yeah, like, I mean, that's the basis. Like CrossFit, I don't know when it's going to finally not be demonized in society, but we're going on like 27 years of this stuff and it's still like the meme.
Well,
Like,
CrossFit's a cult. I mean, there's no
yeah,
doubt
like
about it.
still,
It's
really,
a cult. It's a
it's
cult
been
of
since
healthy living, and
'96. Like, let's move on. Like, it's accepted at this point.
yeah, it is.
It's like it's not going away. It
I
works.
mean, a cult of discipline and a
Yeah,
cult of hard work
yeah,
and a cult of continual improvement and community is a cult I want to be in.
yeah.
You know,
I just it gets funny that like and still in 2023 I get these like these gym guy attacks though. It's like, man, what are you so like threatened of? I don't like if you want to go do leg press, go do leg. I don't give a shit. I literally don't care that you want to sit there and rep out bicep curls. Like, good for you, man.
so so let me get back to the nutrition subject before we
Yeah,
move
please
on to
do.
bicep curls.
Yeah.
I try to minimize my intake of vegetables right now.
Yeah, I honestly don't. Maybe twice a week at most.
And the reason why is because,
You were doing that carnivore thing, weren't you, for a while?
yeah, we can talk
Yeah.
about that.
There we go.
The vegetables are extremely problematic if they're not
Pesticides?
organic,
Yeah. Okay.
and largely due to the
Fair.
pesticides. And what we had talked about earlier was that, those pesticides are largely endocrine disruptors, and there's a large relationship between microplastics and glyphosate, right? Which is the main ingredient in Roundup that Monsanto sold, and
Ah,
that the new
yeah, yeah,
company that
yeah,
sold
yeah,
it
yeah.
is no
Yeah.
longer going to make it.
Yeah.
Well, glyphosate has a half-life of 26 years.
Holy fuck.
And so if you
Oh
don't
my
do
God.
a
So that's
good
in you
job,
forever.
right? If you don't do a good job of, cleaning your vegetables,
Wow.
there's a good chance that glyphosate is in your body, and it's causing a significant disruption to your endocrine system, which is testosterone and everything else.
Yeah.
And so they're talking about, there's some science out that's, testicle and penis sizes have shrunk quite dramatically more than normal, outside of a normal standard deviation, which in statistical terms means ring the alarm bell. That's not normal.
Yeah.
And so they're thinking that a lot of that has to do in the relation of microplastics and pesticides getting involved in people's bodies when they go through puberty.
It's crazy.
And so the reason why I don't eat many vegetables right now is because I want to incorporate vegetables back in my diet once I grow them. And then that way I can know exactly what's in them.
That's
A
fair.
lot of the problem, even with organic, is
It's such a low
glyphosate.
standard. It's such a low standard to be called organic.
It is. And also it can be in a foreign country, and who's governing it 24/7.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, the challenge that I have with organic is, we talked about this earlier. Glyphosate has a 26-year
That's crazy.
half-life.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, to be an organic farm, or to be an organic product, I believe this is the case. I haven't looked this up, but it's what I told from somebody who I trust, was that the land in which the vegetable or plant is grown on has to be free and clear of pesticides for 5 years.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Okay, so what about the other 21 years of
Yeah, right. It's still there because
glyphosate being in the soil?
yeah, the half-life's still going on. Yeah. That's why I said it's a low standard.
And I fundamentally believe that's why, the best things that we can do as a culture, I believe, are a sense of community we can find through hard work and discipline, but also learning how to grow our own foods and raise our own animals.
Yeah. No, you're right.
And,
like we're
and
at we're just at that point.
And you largely have to become independent of the government.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think about is, if we continue going down the path of nonsense and follow the science, but only when it's in our favor, I'm really concerned if we go down the central currency coin route, that what will happen is they will disincentivize land ownership, and they will disincentivize an ability to be autonomous with your resources that the government provides, whether in the form of public utility or in the form of commodities with food. And then if it gets to a point where you don't have any control over that, well, what happens if they start, rationing or limiting water supplies, or using those as forms of control to dissuade public dissent or public opinions on certain topics or maybe in certain areas? I mean, I don't think it's too far of a stretch to say that with the Trump standard, the
Yeah.
DOJ was very biased in its approach, and now they have something that seems really valid and concrete, right? And he should go to jail if that's the case. But they have fucked up so inherently bad getting to this point that
Yep.
even a person who is a supporter of Trump could reasonably say this is a witch hunt, and I don't believe it, because they've been given plenty of reason to think that way.
Yeah.
And so now it's not too far fetched to go, okay, well, if they did this to somebody who's not the political class and they censored scientists over COVID through social media companies with the DOJ in the name of national security and follow the science, it's again not a big stretch to say that they would start to do that in other areas. And so, nutrition and everything else, this is why
Mhm.
these, I think, are really good skills to have,
Yeah.
growing your own food. But not everybody wants to live out in the country, but it's a skill that
Yeah,
I'm
I would do it
definitely going to
tomorrow
go
if I
work
could,
on.
man. Tomorrow if I could. I'm just ready to be on a hill by myself with the high ground and just have all avenues of approach covered with my firearms, and I would just be good. I just buy and raise my own stuff and go from there. But it's a good transition because I wanted to ask you, again, I know you're younger. I know we experienced 9/11 differently, but I think the bigger question today, because you kind of just touched on it with the DOJ, and I was like, especially me growing up, like institutions in this country were kind of, hands off, like they were revered, and I speak from the 3-letter agencies to any of your government stuff that people have, written and made movies and books over for or not centuries, but for the last like 70, 80 years in this country. But where do you think we're at in this country, or where are you with just these institutions? Because it seems like over definitely the last decade, they've lost a ton of credibility. And man, I don't know. It just seems like there's just not a lot of belief and trust in those institutions that have always kind of maintained this legitimacy reputation, if that makes sense. And I know you got 10 minutes, so
Yeah,
we'll
what I hear you saying, what I hear you largely saying is, how do you keep faith and trust in the government?
yeah.
And I think it's somewhat of an easy answer. You take away the responsibility that they have, and then you realize that they're going to try to do the best thing possible, but they're largely going to fail and probably do subpar or below average.
Yeah.
And so if you take away their responsibility, they can't let you down that bad, but you know that they have to exist for the government and society to function. And so I think the answer is, minimize the increasing role and responsibility that they've had, and then put in place severe restrictions, and I shouldn't say restrictions, severe criminal penalties for what we will call conflict of interest. Now, what that will do is that will largely disincentivize the FDA being the on-ramp to the pharmaceutical industry or the
Yeah.
healthcare industry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this isn't going to solve all problems, but what it will do is it will buy a period of time for people to regain trust and confidence in the system, a period of time for largely them to regrow the power and influence that they have and the responsibilities that they have, because over time they'll find ways to get new ones.
Yeah.
And so I think it will just be an iterative process. So I think we're at the point where we're at the end of that process, and now we need to basically say, hey, look, you need to be cut off. We need to put restrictions in place. These restrictions will bring us up to current. and this will get us operating, smoothly and effectively for the next 10 to 15 years. And then we're going to have to do the same thing. I largely think that is really the only viable path forward. These are fundamental institutions for our society, but there's just no there's no evolution or change to them happening in a radical format. And I think a radical change has to happen like it does in the free market about every 10 to 15 years.
Well, I think you also have to have you have to demonstrate some pattern of success. And unfortunately, a lot of them have been wrong for so long, especially recently in their assessments and what they've, presented to the American people. Like, they don't really have a track record at this point of deterrence, of success, of anything that you would largely put your trust and faith in, because what they've presented going back, even, when General Powell, or he was Colin Powell, Secretary of State at the time, making his case to the UN for our justification for invading Iraq, like, it's not proven to be true.
Yeah, I definitely get with that. I see this in technology a lot with the clients we work with.
Okay.
They go from one extreme to the other.
Yeah.
Because like, this didn't work, so the exact opposite must work.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is it's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
And Eric, I don't have the answer for how do you solve the accountability problem.
Well, this was a waste. I'm just going to turn this off. No, I'm just kidding.
So it's really tough and challenging. Somebody has to have the courage to basically say, we are going to put it in law and on paper that activities of any role at any level constitute as criminal behavior. And so taking the country to war over something that was materially false is I don't know if it's an option, but it is an indictable offense.
Yeah.
We have to do some things that are specific, but have a little bit of room for interpretation, so that basically, in my opinion, we incentivize making politicians think twice. They're still going to do it.
Yeah.
But we incentivize making them think twice about it. And the reality is, I don't know if that will ever get solved. And I don't think it gets solved until you get money out of politics. And the largest amounts of money in politics are pharmaceuticals and technology.
Yep.
And so the way that we can solve the pharmaceutical problem now is becoming more healthy as a country, eating the right foods, forcing the food industry to, start to make the products that align with a betterment of our health as a society. And then that will inherently start to kill the pharmaceutical industry and make them less powerful, because their money printing machine will go away. I also think that on the vaccine side too, turns out that a lot of the anti-vax people had a lot of things right. You go listen to Kennedy on his podcast he just had with Jordan Peterson. And he pretty much just goes, hey, look, like all the childhood vaccines, all the things that I was saying that I was blackballed for, that I was put on a censorship list, they did all those same things with the COVID vaccine. So it's not that far of a stretch to think that their monetary interests were aligned with getting a vaccine out into the marketplace and then influencing regulation to make sure that they could sell vaccines and then get immunity from it, or have immunity from it through whatever the thing was that Nixon signed. And, hey, by the way, that was the playbook of what happened with COVID. And so from that front, I think that, parents, if they can find a way to homeschool or to become more autonomous of their health decisions, I think general health and wellness in terms of nutrition and health choice independence, I think those things could really cripple the system. Because if you look at what's holding it up, it's technology, it's healthcare, and it's the pharmaceutical industry.
Alan, Alan is making the case for accountability for our leaders at the top levels, and unfortunately, we have not seen that take place. I would love to continue this conversation with you at a later date. Maybe bring on Curtis, and we can talk about abs and all those things that he likes to flex in the team pictures. But this is Alan Morte. He joins us from 3 Ventures. He has the WAC Attack podcast that you should totally go and check out on Spotify. Other places, I assume. Yes, not just Spotify.
It's on every podcast
Everywhere.
channel
Yes,
you can think
as
of.
it should. Okay. And so that's him. And I appreciate you for joining me. Thank you very much. Until next time, please, there always will be bourbon. Grab more, drink more, do more. It's Alan Morte, 3 Ventures, WAC Attack Podcast. Thanks, brother.
Thanks, Eric.